Even before the assassination, Austro-Hungarian Chief of Staff Konrad von Hertzendorf had pressed for war against Serbia no fewer than 20 times. Now he made his case again.
I expressed to His Majesty my opinion that war with Serbia was unavoidable. That is entirely correct, said His Majesty. But how are you going to wage war if everyone, in particular Russia, is going to attack us? We have backing from Germany, I replied. His Majesty gave me a searching look and said, "Can you be certain of that?"
This was the moment when what could have been just another war in the Balkans began to turn into the First World War. Austro-Hungarian Emperor Franz Joseph now asked the German Kaiser for support. On the 6th of July, he got just the answer he wanted.
The German government is of the opinion that we must decide what is to be done. Whatever we decide, we may always be certain that we will find Germany at our side, a faithful ally and friend of our monarchy.
Germany's Kaiser Wilhelm II was Queen Victoria's oldest grandson. He was a flamboyant character with no eye for detail. He had an immature streak, desperate to be popular, often petulant. A king's insecurities matter little if he has no power, but the Kaiser was Germany's commander-in-chief, its supreme warlord. Germany's crucial decision to back Austria was made with no care for the consequences. Neither the Kaiser nor his senior political and military leaders took any steps to find out how far Austria-Hungary was prepared to go. It was Germany's confident support that pushed Austria forward. But far from plunging the world into war in 1914 out of aggression, Germany was just nudging it closer out of incompetence and wishful thinking. The Kaiser was so sure no war was brewing that he went on holiday. But any local Balkan conflict had the potential to set Europe alight, given that Europe was divided into two volatile camps. On the one side were Germany, Austria-Hungary and Italy. On the other were France and Russia. If Austria attacked Serbia, Russia might leap to her aid and attack Austria. Then Germany would have to fight to protect Austria. This document was Austria's excuse for war. It was filled with demands so extreme and insulting that Serbia could never accept them. But just in case they did, the Austrian ambassador in Belgrade was ordered to reject any reply as unacceptable. He delivered the ultimatum at 6 p.m. on the 23rd of July 1914. The Kaiser was on his yacht in Norway when the text of the Austrian ultimatum arrived.
The Kaiser arrived on deck as usual after breakfast and said to me, I was still holding the wireless message, "That's a pretty strong note for once in a while." "It certainly is," I replied, "but it means war." Whereupon the Kaiser observed that Serbia would never risk a war.
She might not have risked it on her own, but she had a powerful ally, Russia. Convinced that Germany was warmongering, Russia began partial mobilization on the 28th of July. This was the second key stage of the crisis, as Britain's Foreign Secretary Edward Grey warned.
From the moment the dispute ceases to be one between Austria-Hungary and Serbia and becomes one in which another great power is involved, it cannot but end in the greatest catastrophe that has ever befallen the continent of Europe.
Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia that same day. The first shots of the war were fired from here, the Austrian fortress of Zemun, just across the river from Belgrade. In the dead of night, Major Wojciech had the Black Hand blow the only railway bridge.
Windows shattered to smithereens, and broken glass covered the floor. Patients started screaming. So it was true. The war had begun.
It was still only a war between Austria-Hungary and Serbia. And on the 29th of July, as the shells fell on Belgrade, there was a final attempt to keep it that way. A series of last-minute telegrams flashed across Europe. Tsar to Kaiser, cousin to cousin.
Dear Willie, an ignoble war has been declared on a weak country. The indignation in Russia is enormous.
Dear Nicky, I am exerting my utmost influence on the Austrians. I confidently hope you will help me to...
Dear Willie, my troops shall not take any provocative action.
But by now the crisis was beyond the control of monarchs or politicians. It was in the hands of the military. From the moment Russia mobilized her army, German generals knew their own clock was ticking. The alliance between France and Russia meant that Germany faced a war on two fronts. Her only hope was to deal with France in the west before the main Russian armies could invade from the east. That left no time to wait and see. For Germany, Russian mobilization meant war. Germany hadn't looked for a fight. Her generals knew a European war would be long and devastating. But every year, Russia was growing stronger. Better war with her sooner than later. On the 1st of August, Germany declared war on Russia. 2 days later, she declared war on Russia's ally, France. Across Europe, 10 million men headed off to fight. For all the bans and flag-waving, many went unwillingly to war.
Where are we off to? France? Belgium? Or the East? At the station, people waved goodbye, some with handkerchiefs. I thought of my wife and child left alone at home. In fact, it wasn't so much a thought as a fearful shadow flitting over my soul.
God, how long is this town? My bayonets digging in, my collars strangling me. When I look up, I see a pretty girl. She was so full of admiration, so moved by it all that I realize we've got to look handsome and walk tall. Off we march to the sound of shrill brass. Although where we're going, you die. You're defaced, hacked up, torn apart. All down the line, my comrades straighten up at the sight of her.
There's great excitement among my comrades. The bachelors are calm, they're even joking about it. Family men are depressed. Some are saying we'll get nothing from this war. We'll get beaten by the Germans. What's in it for us peasant soldiers? Why have we got to fight for some offended Serbs?
The leaders had little better idea why they were fighting than the men. They had no lists of war aims. Germany and Austria, Serbia, Russia and France were all convinced they were fighting a defensive war, forced on them by someone else. The only great power in Europe still on the sidelines was Britain. And she was most reluctant to go to war to help Serbia.
If it were physically possible for Serbia to be towed out to sea and sunk there, the air of Europe would at once seem cleaner.
Britain did not regard herself formally bound by treaty obligations, as Foreign Secretary Grey assured Parliament.
We are not parties to the Franco-Russian alliance. We do not even know the terms of the alliance.
On the 2nd of August 1914, Britain was still at peace, but only just.
We've been in a state of great excitement as the reservists are being called up. All the railways are guarded. Everything points to the Great War, so long expected, being upon us.
In private, Grey and other leaders knew Britain had to fight. If Britain stayed neutral, the war would still threaten her global position. And if she failed to come to the aid of her allies, France and Russia, they too might become her enemies. So at 11 p.m. on the 4th of August, Britain declared war on Germany. And the thing she was fighting to protect became the biggest single resource she brought to the war: her empire, with its vast economic strength and worldwide network of trade routes. Britain's economic strength underpinned her allies. This was a war kept going by alliances, and what happened on one front could have critical effect on another.